All right. So, chapter 3 is Karma Yoga, and we have two shlokas, 3.6 and 3.7. 3.6 goes like this. Karmendriyani samyamya yaste manasa smaran indriyarthan vimuddhatma nithya sa uchyate. Translation: one who restrains the senses and organs of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, suddenly deludes himself and is called a pretender. And 3.7, yes tvaindriyani manasa niyamarabhate arjuna karmendriya karma yogam asakta sa vishishyate. Translation: on the other hand, he who controls the senses by the mind and engages his active organs in works of devotion without attachment is by far superior. So here the chapter is about karma yoga and uh, path of action, that is activity. So the summary goes like this: everyone must engage in some sort of activity in this material world, but actions can either bind one to this world or liberate one from it. By acting for the pleasure of the Supreme without selfish motives, one can be liberated from the law of karma, that is action and reaction, and attain transcendental knowledge of the self and the Supreme. So the goal of all yoga in real, as mentioned in the scriptures, is to connect with the Supreme, right? And then there are different methods employed to do that, to achieve that. So karma yoga here is talking about performing action that we have to, but for the pleasure of the Supreme, not for one's own sense gratification. Otherwise, it binds one to action and reaction, and that we will see here in these shlokas is talking about we need to restrain our senses and organs of action, and mind also is involved in this, and there's the second shloka was about there's like a comparison, one who actually controls the senses by the mind and engages active organs in work of devotion without attachment is far superior. So there's like comparison, then one who doesn't do activity or performing activity, and the other is the pseudo transcendentalist. So controlling senses and the mind and engaging the organs of work, that is um, karmendriyas in devotion, that is far superior. So let's get into detail. So Prabhupada says this is very important thing. Yoga indriyani samyamya. The definition of yoga is sense control, controlling the sense. Here, Krishna is saying that it is not possible to control your senses artificially. So Prabhupada gives a details about what practices are prevalent. So one practice is adopted by those who, like some yogis, are trying to control their senses by closing their eyes, right? So like an example is somebody, if he says that I will not see a beautiful woman now, but this does not mean that he has or can control his senses, because if his mind, although he's forcing his senses not to indulge in thinking of going after women or beautiful women or other sense objects, but behind the scene his mind is dwelling on those sense objects, then it's not a success, right? Then it means he is not able to control his senses, then it's like just a show off. Now people do not know the secret that you cannot curb down the natural force of sense. So this is a very important thing to what shares. So and if you let the senses go on their own way, that is also very dangerous, because if one doesn't control his senses and just lets the senses take over and go after whatever it is tempted to indulge in, then one is going to hell because one might be indulging in sinful activities like that. So one has to follow the scriptures as instructions given in the scripture. So Adanta Gobir Vishatam Tamishram Punaha Punash Charvita Charvananam. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 5th chapter, 38th shloka. Adanta means uncontrolled. Go means senses. So this is here Prahlad Maharaja is replying, because of their uncontrolled senses, persons too much addicted to materialistic life make progress towards hellish conditions and repeatedly chew that which has already been chewed. Their inclinations toward Krishna are never aroused, either by the instructions of others, by their own efforts, or by combination of both. So Prahlad Maharaj is warning this, warning, giving us a warning that in real what happens um, because of uncontrolled senses indulging. So if one studies, Prabhupada gives an example that if one studies the entire history of the world, one will realize that it is a history of sense gratification. How? So Prabhupada talks about this personality like Adolf Hitler. So one leader proposes his way of sense gratification, and other leaders, like then prevalent contemporary leaders, Mr. Churchill or President Roosevelt or others, say no to it and propose something else. So one leader wants the government to function in a certain way according to his sense. He is presenting a program of sense gratification, and another leader is rejecting that and presenting another program of sense gratification. And then what follows is there is a clash, and what follows is war. So even in our present time, we see that this is what is happening, right? Um, One trying to force his beliefs, his senses, his sense gratification, so others not accepting to it, not adhering to it, or they have their own agenda. So like this, so because their entire plan is very material, it's not spiritually focused, it's not based on the scriptures, it's not based on Lord Vishnu or Krishna, what they have mentioned in the Vedas or the scriptures. So that is why it is. So all this is also nothing but sense gratification, and this is the history of the world. Therefore, if one does not control his senses, then his senses will drag him to the darkest region of hell. That is another problem. So if a leader is like that, and the general populace follows that leader, then one leader leads the entire population into hell. And then if one does it on an individual level, the same outcome. So next, there is another class of people who think, oh, one undertakes so much pain and trouble simply for sense gratification. It is better to control our senses. And Prabhupada says, example, that Mayavadi philosopher, they often quote this term, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. And according to them, what they say is that this material world is useless. And only Brahman, the supreme Brahman, impersonal Brahman, that is the truth, right? And Prabhupada says that this is also another form of sense gratification. In fact, this is even bigger sense gratification, because the outcome is even more abominable. Why? Because these Mayavadi philosophers, they want to merge into the existence of the supreme. That means by becoming Hitler, Churchill, or Roosevelt, their senses were not very much satisfied. Now they say that this world is false. Now let me become the supreme. Therefore, this is another form of sense gratification. So from Bhagavad Gita, we understand that there are three levels of aspects of God realization. One, the lowest is Brahman realization. And then second is Paramatma realization, and the topmost is Bhagwan realization, or the complete realization, where you realize the supreme truth perfectly. So Mayavadis are very different, by saying this is false, all that is and completely wrong. Brahmavadis, what they do is they believe in all three aspects. They just don't want to proceed to the Paramatma realization or Bhagwan realization. They just want to stick to the Brahma Jyoti realization, Brahman realization. But they don't deny the fact that the God has a beautiful form, and they don't say this material world is false. They understand rightly that this material world also is derived from, is a manifestation of the one of the potencies of the Lord, that is material potency. Thus, it is real but temporary. So they are rightly placed. Although they don't want to indulge in Paramatma relation or proceed to the Bhagwan relation, that is another thing. But Mayavadis are completely wrong in their philosophy because of denying the fact, the Lord is the Lord Bhagwan is a form, and that it is his potency, material potency, which is actually derived from a spiritual potency. Source is Bhagwan, the origin is Bhagwan. He is the cause of all causes. So that is why it's even worse to follow Mayavadi philosophy. So Prabhupada says that to please note that this world without Krishna consciousness is simply sense gratification. Therefore, the so-called yogis may adopt 15 minutes meditation or 15 hours meditation or 15 months meditation. But as soon as meditation is finished, what happens, what leads is sense gratification. So we don't stop our endeavors. We don't stop our service. This service or meditation has to go on forever. Um, we understand that we are Jivatma, we are spirit soul, and Bhagwan is the source of everything, and we are eternally servants of the Lord, and we need to serve this Supreme Lord, Bhagwan, in loving devotion. It's not like a something forced, like you undertake a job or something, but this is like loving out of love. We accept this and we serve the Supreme Lord. Then it is loving devotion, then it is right. So, so this sense gratification program is very strong, and as long as one indulges in sense gratification, the repetition of birth and death will go on. Bhagavatam says that these people are working for sense gratification in 5.5.4 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Nunam Pramattaha. When a person considers sense gratification to be the aim of life, he suddenly becomes mad after materialistic life, living, and engages in all kinds of sinful activity. He does not know that due to his past misdeeds, he has already received a body which, although temporary, is the cause of his misery. So they don't have this knowledge, and they are in ignorance because of that, and then they are, continue to live life in ignorance, and it gets worse and worse and worse because of performing sinful activity. The heart, or the heart actually gets covered in ignorance, and that needs to be cleansed. In the region of the heart is the mind, intelligence, ego, the soul, and mind, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. So we need to clean this mirror of the mind, which is consciousness. So what's in consciousness is in the mind, what's in mind is in consciousness. So mind is working what's in consciousness, and consciousness reflects what mind is working on. So therefore it is not befitting for an intelligent man to involve himself again in the activities of sense gratification, by which he perpetually gets material bodies one after another. So um, the four sinful activities are illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling. And these are the means by which one gets another material body, and that is full body that is full of miseries. So because one performs sin, so that action has a reaction, cause has an effect, and that person receives a material body. So in that material body, he experiences further misery because of his performing sin in the past life. Similarly, if one performs pious activity and has the material desires, he gets a material body in which he gets to enjoy the outcome or result of performing those pious activities which he did in the previous life. So this material body, life of this material body in the material world, pap and punya, suffering and happiness, that is material suffering and material happiness goes on until he comes up with a solution with knowledge, like taking Bhagavad Gita and seriously practicing it and believing it in faith, with faith. So in the Vedas, it is said, Asango hi ayam Purusha. The living entity is not really connected with this material world. But due to his tendency to enjoy the material senses, he is put into this material condition. One should rather perfect his life by associating with devotees. He should not become further implicated in the material body. So this body is temporary, but so long this body is there, you will have to suffer. And what exactly is the suffering? Prabhupada explains that the sum total of suffering is birth, death, old age, and disease. So our entire life comprises of this, and this is occurring due to this material body. Therefore, the problem here is how to stop this repetition of taking this material body again and again. So So there is no stoppage to this transmigration of the soul if one doesn't, you know, endeavor to actually come out of this thing. So if you don't endeavor to stop it or free yourself from the cycle of birth and death, there is no portion of being freed from this suffering or these sufferings. So people do not know it, and they think that they are actually advancing. So no matter where in this universe you go, from top higher planetary systems, heavenly planets, or lower hellish planetary systems, or planet Earth, you will find this birth, death, old age, and disease. Other higher planetary systems might have long duration of life, more sense gratification, but this goes on. So therefore, sense gratification must be stopped. So senses are very strong. One cannot stop them artificially, neither by um, you know yoga process nor by the jnana process. One has to take to loving devotional service of the Lord, um, like bhakti yoga. So by these other endeavors, you can, for time being simply delay or stall it, the suffering. Therefore, the only perfect remedy is Krishna consciousness. So, for example, people take to hatha yoga or other yoga processes and spend so much time, and we don't have that much time which we had in our previous in the previous yogas, like Satya Yoga, Treta Yoga, Dwapar Yoga, where you could practice this Ashtanga Yoga for long duration of life, and try to achieve success. If not, then you take another life and achieve success. But this we have very short duration of life and full of confusion and misery um, in Kali Yuga. So best is taking to Bhakti Yoga. Perfect remedy is Krishna consciousness. So when devotees who are in Krishna consciousness, when they perform this eating of nice prasadam, dancing, chanting, reading, philosophy, and that is also sense gratification, but it is in connection with Krishna, and that is of great significance. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts anything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness for one's own sense gratification, material sense gratification. On the other hand, one who rejects everything without knowledge of his relationship to Krishna is not as complete in his renunciation. So, renunciation, renouncing something, like we mentioned earlier, closing eyes and but outwardly you're trying to force your senses not to get indulged. But in the mind, you're contemplating on those sense objects, dwelling on those sense objects. That is not real renunciation. That is not yukta viragya. That is falgu viragya, or that is marketed viragya. Like, falgu viragya is there's this river. Prabhupada gives an example. There is this river Falgu. Outwardly, it is dry. Outside, it is dry, but inside there is water. So there is like quicksand, and so that's like the state of the mind. Outwardly, you are forcing your senses to not indulge, but inside the mind, you are contemplating on those sense objects. So that is like this. That is not going to help. So it has to be yukta vairagya, or real vairagya. That is understanding that Krishna Bhagwan is material potency or spiritual potency. Even material potency, these material objects, these world, this entire world. If you are blessed with something, you can rightly use understanding this in knowledge that this is also a derivative or a manifestation of the material energy which actually belongs to the Supreme Lord, this entire world, and you can rightly use it in service of the Lord. Then it is rightly practicing. So this Krishna conscious movement is an art of living by which you will feel your senses are fully satisfied, but you are going to be free in your next life. This is the nice process, and artificially, if you want to stop your senses, you will fail. So we cannot stop sense gratification by any artificial means. So Prabhupada says we simply follow anukarana and anusarana. One is imitation, another is following the footprints of great acharyas or leaders. So one tries to follow the footprints of great personalities, great acharyas or guru. That is very nice, but we cannot imitate because imitation is very dangerous. So example often is given is Lord Shiva. He drank poison. So we cannot attempt those things, right? Lord Shiva is um, perfect, perfectly meditating, perfectly practicing. He's well aware. He's perfect in knowledge. But we cannot imitate and try to do those things. So that is very dangerous for us. Um, so so on the other hand, if a sincere person, even a householder in family life, tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga and Krishna consciousness through his working senses without attachment, he is by far superior. Over time, what happens is gradually such sincere person will be able to renounce his desire for the fruit of his karma. Instead of artificially trying to meditate and controlling the senses, one needs to just engage his senses in the activities of Krishna consciousness, and gradually you will be happy, your senses will be controlled. The Swartha Gati, or the goal of self interest, is to reach Vishnu. Realize Vishnu, reach Vishnu, the spiritual world. The whole Varna and Ashrama system is designed to help us reach this supreme goal of life. So, one should not think that householder cannot achieve. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For purification of the heart and self realization, it is essential that one lives a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue to carry out his business, no matter what role, what job you're doing, without attachment. This is very essential. And that will lead him gradually to the progressive path and achieve the supreme goal. Slowly and slowly, you will progress, step by step basis, and and next knowledge or next step will be revealed to you if you take to scriptural life or life as mentioned in the scriptures, Shastras. Such a sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than a false pretender or pseudo transcendentalist who adopts show bottle spiritualism for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment to cheat the innocent public. So Prabhupada gives an example that a sincere sweeper in the street is far better than a charlatan meditator who works only for the sake of making a living. As we mentioned earlier, the example of this Palgu River, or a meditationist or pseudo transcendentalist who's closing his eyes, forcing his senses, but he's actually not able to control his senses. Inside in his mind, he's contemplating on those sense objects. So this is what it means here. Practitioners who are after controlling their knowledge acquiring senses, such as that is Gyanendriyas, such as eyes, ear, tongues, then carefully and attentively endeavor to perform karma yoga, these activities with their working senses, karma indriya, such as legs, hands, and speech, are qualified to achieve the supreme goal of life. That is, get free from the material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. Prabhupada says that his Guru Maharaj used to say that don't accept spiritual life for making a living or making money from it. Right? That should not be the goal. Your life should be sacrificed for Krishna. That is what is wanted. Otherwise, you shall be just a pretender. And in that, you might earn more, delay your progress and sin, perform sins, and take another material life and suffer again until you come to spiritual life, not for making living or making money from it, not for your sense gratification, but actually realizing supreme goal of life, supreme truth. Yes, that often is sambandha avidya prayojana. That is, we are who we are. We are eternally, we Jivatma are eternally part and parcel of Supreme Lord. We are servant. Krishna is the master, and we need to serve him. Whatever we do, we serve him with loving devotion for the pleasure of for his pleasure. Then our senses and everything is rightly utilized, rightly placed, and we will make progress and gradually achieve the supreme goal. So, so that is how it is. Um, that is yukta vairagya. That is the real renunciation. Understanding everything and utilizing everything. That material, spiritual is actually belongs to Krishna. Whether this material world, every material objects, his material energy, everything can be rightly utilized for service or for pleasure of Krishna. So that is how it is. So thank you, Prabhuji Mataji. Thanks for joining. And if anybody has any question, please ask before we call it a day. Thank you. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. So if nobody has any question, um, thank you for joining. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
Mataji.
Pranam, sir.
Dandavat pranam, everyone.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining. श्रीमद् भागवत गीता की जय, श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्री गुरु परंपरा की जय, श्री प्रभुपाद की जय, श्री गुरु महाराज की जय. हरे कृष्ण. थैंक यू.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
हरे कृष्ण माता जी. दंडवत प्रणाम.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavad Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hari
Hare
Bol.
Krishna. Pranam.
Dandavat Pranam, Mataji. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.